Hey everybody, it's Jason with Parallel Reality coming back with you today with an article from Red State dated September 2nd, and it is entitled Victor Davis Hanson, who, by the way, is a historian, lays out 15 rules for radicals he says will get Kamala Harris elected, and God help us all if that actually happens, and no, that's not an exaggeration. So the article says, let's begin with a given. Kamala Harris is a total fraud. That is correct. It says Harris is in way over her head, and she knows it. It couldn't be more evident. Her body language, which included awkwardly nodding while uncomfortably answering questions or trying to make a point, during her taped interview with CNN's Dana Bash, was almost painful to watch. Yet, incredulously, the most radical presidential nominee in the history of the country has a conceivable chance of winning the election. And again, that's just amazing that that's even coming up as a thing. Distinguished Fellow of the Center for American Greatness and conservative political commentator Victor Davis Hanson, which I think he's going to abbreviate as VDH going forward, and yeah, I see it right there, not only believes it's conceivable that Harris can win in November, he also believes that if she follows 15 rules for radicals, which he laid out in a Monday op-ed, she will win. That, folks, is beyond scary. Yes, it is, because our country, I think, effectively ends if Kamala Harris is elected, and no, again, not an exaggeration. So it says, VDH began with a spot-on question, says, how do accomplished radicals elect a mediocre far-left presidential candidate? So it says, the task might, at first seem impossible, VDH wrote, adding the obvious. Kamala Harris is currently a radical incumbent vice president. Going to clear my throat one more time here and not cut it out. So it says, for more than 3 years, she was second in command to an unprecedentedly unliked Democratic president, his failed policies, and his unpopular record. Harris herself has compiled a hard left trail over her entire career while loudly boasting indiscreetly to leftist audiences of being proudly woke and radical. Why? Because Harris was deemed such a liability that she has become a Spiro Agnew-like insurance policy for a failing Biden. Until just recently, Democrats had considered an unpopular and enfeebled Biden nonetheless far preferable to any incoherent, lightweight, and widely ridiculed potential replacement Vice President Harris. Most challenging for a Harris candidacy makeover was the long-entrenched Democratic Party's reluctance to remove a debilitated President Biden from the Democratic ticket. As every word of the above is true, and then some. Democrats, including congressional lawmakers, were, not all that long ago, terrified of the mere thought of Harris as the party's presidential nominee, even as Joe Biden's cognitive capacity steadily declined. Terrified, that is, until they weren't. And yeah, remember just like maybe 2 or 3 months ago, they were talking about getting her off the ticket because she was a liability to him, and then suddenly Joe Biden stepped down and everybody was something like, oh my God, she's like the greatest living human being that's ever existed. So yeah, like it says, they were terrified until they weren't. So then came the 4-day Democrat National Convention in Chicago, the supercharged gaslighting extravaganza at which Kamala Harris was elevated to near saint-like stature. The one person that Democrats had most feared becoming their standard bearer became their future. She absurdly became their new beginning. Kamala Harris was miraculously transformed into the candidate of joy, whose campaign of joy would fix what ails America. And by the way, go look at who else had a campaign of joy, okay? And that would fix everything. And when you find that out, you might want to reconsider voting for Kamala because it's one of history's worst groups. So just letting you know. This is a complete crock, of course, but there it is. So it says, and those 15 rules for radicals will get Kamala Harris elected. As VDH sees it, a Harris complete makeover requires that you follow 15 radical rules to the letter. Here are several of my favorites. So I don't think, and I scanned through this article initially. I haven't read the whole thing. So I guess the author doesn't actually go through the whole thing, but I believe the actual article is linked somewhere. But anyway, let's go through it. Says number 1 says remake Harris as an entirely fresh, happy face. She's about joy and vibe, which beats position papers and policy statements. Banish all thoughts that she is an incumbent vice president and co-owns the last 4 years of the Biden administration. This is mission pretty much accomplished. The question is whether Kamala's joy and vibe will be enough, even though she appears to think it will be. The answer is no. Joy doesn't win elections. This 2. Ignore or deny that Harris, as vice president, could have long ago enacted her new makeover proposal, or could do so right now in the remaining 5 months of her administration's tenure. She was the last person out of the room when Biden made those awful decisions, like Afghanistan, for example. She herself has said that, and you can go look that up. It says this is the most humorous of Harris's shticks. Her on day one nonsense absurdly ignores the reality that, as of this article, she's been in office for 1,321 days. What has she accomplished? Rhetorical question. The answer is 0. And number 3 here, it says, for the next 70 days, reinvent Harris as a moderate. Xerox much of Donald Trump's current, more popular agenda. Have Harris claim it as her own. Reboot her as a border hawk, a China hawk, a defense hawk, a budget hawk, and a law and order hawk. This is suffice it to say that Harris has flip-flopped on everything from fracking to building a wall on the southern border, which she hilariously rationalizes as changing her positions but not her values. Please. Number 6. Do not mention Biden at all. Harris is not to be seen with him in photos or at events. Create a vaguely joyful but completely imaginary Harris record. Separated from the miserable Biden-Harris administration. Leaked that she was unhappy with Biden. Seems like this is all happening. As that pretty much became a reality the nanosecond Biden was all but dragged off the stage at the DNC after he gave what amounted to his farewell speech. Think about it. The President of the United States has become, within the Democrat Party, the person whose name shall not be spoken. Yeah. So, number 7, call Trump a mobster, criminal, insurrectionist, and dictator nonstop. Never provide any evidence to support such charges. When challenged, double down and let loose with worse invective. Says that ship sailed years ago. Yeah, true. And don't forget, a funny mustache German man, white supremacist, xenophobe, and misogynist. Pretty sure he's not any of those, but all right. Says 10, harangue about race and gender nonstop. Define the election as a stark binary between a young, oppressed, but dynamic black woman and an old, oppressor, racist white guy. Again, it's not racist, but I get what the author's trying to say. It says big time. Regardless of how Trump reacts to Harris during the September 10th debate, the Democrats and their lapdog media will play the above to the hilt. 14. Privately assure leftist activists and Democratic politicos that any backslidings from supporting lifelong left-wing advocacies are temporary and necessary 70-day pretexts. Instead, look at what Harris actually does after November 5th, not anything she must say before then. This is guaranteed. Anyone who believes San Francisco radical leftist Harris has an epiphany and now supports fracking, of all things, is beyond gullible. And there's the link to the article I mentioned before, which you can read right here. That says the bottom line. It says, as the sane, rational, and honest among us are well aware, the faux transformation of radical leftist Kamala Harris is well underway. The most galling part about it is she knows, Democrat Party knows, and rank-and-file Democrat voters all know it's a complete farce. Yep, Kamala Harris is a total fraud, and it couldn't be more obvious. Yep, fully agree. And again, I haven't read the actual Victor Davis Hanson article itself right here, so might have to go read that because, yeah, interesting to read. Let me know what you think about this in the comments below. Like, share, subscribe, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.